the Cuomo standard. The complaint Sheriff Apple describes is the first known instance where a woman has made an official report with a law enforcement agency over alleged misconduct by Cuomo.
She filed a formal report alleging criminal conduct against the governor. The conduct was sexual in nature. The meeting at that point commences the investigative process for the Albany County Sheriff's Office.
Let's bring in our panel, constitutional law attorney and Newsmax contributor Jenna Ellis and Newsmax contributor George Papadopoulos, former Trump 2016 foreign policy advisor. Another hit today, but Friday it was clear that Cuomo's legal team is not going down without a fight. Responding to the New York AG's report, they characterized the report as a hit job on the governor's reputation.
There has been no open-minded fact-finding in this case. The investigation was conducted to support a predetermined narrative.
George, what did you think of his lawyer's response?
I think that Governor Cuomo was completely done. And you know what, in this country, the reason that Lady Justice is often depicted as wearing a blindfold or being blind is because that blindfold is supposed to represent the fair and equal administration of the law, one that disregards wealth or political affiliation. And what I saw with this lawyer of his is, of course, doing what any lawyer would do, is defending their clients against this scandal in which 11 women have gone out and accused the governor of sexually harassing them. There's been an entire attorney general report which backed up those findings, and now there's clearly a criminal investigation in which the Albany County Sheriff today suggested that there might be an imminent arrest coming for Governor Cuomo based on these various allegations. So I think he's in hot water here, and his political career looks to be completely over.
So, Jenna, another of Cuomo's 11 accusers filed a criminal complaint against him, but his attorneys took direct aim at her credibility, discounting her story and a timeline that they created from governor's mansion logs, staff emails, and more. Is this really a winning strategy?
Well, I don't think it's a winning strategy in the court of public opinion, which is clearly what his attorneys were trying to accomplish during that press conference. To attack the victim's credibility like that, I think that's a valid defense in the context of the courtroom. And certainly Andrew Cuomo has every opportunity for fundamental fairness and due process. But at the same time, I keep reiterating that he himself has asked other people to step down just when there's a mere allegation. And so when he's wanting to take advantage of due process for himself and isn't playing by the same standard, the court of public opinion knows better. And I don't think that his attorneys were very effective when they're trying to attack the credibility of the victims, and certainly not when he made that statement this past Tuesday and that entire montage of just saying, well, I'm Italian and therefore this type of conduct is perfectly fine. It's actually worse, I think, than if he just didn't say anything, and if his attorneys said, no comment, we're gonna prove this in court, and the allegations, just flatly deny them. I don't think they're making any headway whatsoever. But clearly, this is also to reach out to lawmakers as well, because in New York State there is a pending potentially impeachment, and I think that's really what their concern right now is. But of course, now there's the criminal complaint as well.
George, first it was the nursing homes. He seemed to get a pass on that. And now it's his sexual harassment, and a lot of people are turning on him. Do you think we're looking at the governor's final days in office?
President Biden has come out publicly stating that he wants Governor Cuomo to resign. The White House has suggested the same exact thing. You have the Assembly in New York State suggesting that they are ready to impeach the governor simply based off of the Attorney General's report. The governor is facing a tremendous uphill battle here in which he is losing high-profile supporters within his own party, and it's quite extraordinary considering that it seemed that only high-profile Republicans were the ones that were coming under these various criminal investigations in which their due process was seemingly targeted. But now the tide has turned, and Governor Cuomo was essentially a titan of the Democratic Party and was considered a frontrunner to actually possibly clinch the nomination in 2024 for the Democratic Party. And now, with this criminal investigation hanging over his head, losing allies at the White House, at the State Assembly in New York, I don't think he could overcome this burden. And now with the reporting coming out from the Albany State, the county sheriff, it just really looks bad for him.
Yeah, and certainly the end of his political career. You know, it's interesting to take a look at the polls right now. The first one I want to show you, this is his job approval as governor. 63% disapprove versus 28% approving. And then they ask whether he should resign. 70% say yes, it's time for the governor to go. Jenna, are you surprised by these numbers?
Not at all. And I think a huge factor in these numbers as well is how he mishandled the nursing home situation with COVID. And so a lot of the Democrats, I think their motivation is to get him out of office so that they can kind of brush that scandal under the rug. But Andrew Cuomo is still going to be facing, hopefully some investigations along those lines. And I think that the American people, and especially New Yorkers, see through that. They see how he mishandled all of that, and then, had a book on leadership, and just this whole entire hypocritical situation is so typical of Democrats. And I think that they're wanting to cut him loose so that he doesn't undermine the rest of their party. And they're wise to do so, frankly, because he has shown that hypocrisy. He's shown no remorse. He's shown nothing in terms of reaching out to the families of those victims of the nursing home scandal. And so this is just going to keep plaguing the Democrats into the midterms if they don't get him out of office.
And Jen, I want to also ask you about this because his brother Chris was advising him for a while. It's been widely reported CNN even was going to allow a temporary leave for Chris to go and advise his brother. He did not take that. They said they did not condone what he was doing. But obviously now there's a lot of scrutiny on Chris Cuomo as to what happens next. What do you think about what happens next for Chris Cuomo? Should he be stepping down?
Well, CNN obviously is not the beacon of credibility in journalism, and I think we all know that. But for someone like Chris Cuomo, obviously he has the family ties, and full disclosure would have been appropriate. And for him to at least make a statement, or when all of this happened on Tuesday, allow someone else to come in and do his show. I mean, something that just shows that he's acting in good faith, where the email that was allegedly sent from him to his brother and other members of the New York governor's office, basically drafting what looked like the statement for Cuomo to then videotape on Tuesday and then not even address it on his show. I think that looks very damaging, not only on Chris Cuomo, but on the entire network, when he is advising, but not fully disclosing that. And I think that that's going to ultimately hurt not only his credibility as an alleged journalist. I think he's more of an activist than a journalist, as everyone is on CNN. But if they want to salvage their reputation at all, they're going to have to address this head on.
Yeah, it's one of the many reasons people are not trusting the mainstream media that much anymore. I want to switch back over to Governor Cuomo. Earlier this week in his video statement, he was defending his kissing. Let's listen to this.
I do kiss people on the forehead. I do kiss people on the cheek. I do kiss people on the hand. I do embrace people. I do hug people, men and women. I do on occasion say, ciao Bella. On occasion, I do slip and say sweetheart or darling or honey. I do banter with people. I do tell jokes.
We mentioned this a moment ago, but is this even helping him at all by saying all of this, showing these images? Does that do him any justice in this?
Not at all. I mean, I think that it's really embarrassing, frankly, for him to be using the, well, I'm an Italian defense. And, again, this is false equivalency to say, well, look, just because I've interacted appropriately with certain people, then that means that every single instance is somehow covered under this whole wide swath of every single interaction. And so, this is typical for this type of credibility defense to say, hey, look at all of the times that I was acting in good faith. So ignore all of the reality of these other allegations. I don't think that's going to go very far. And I think a lot of people were very, very turned off by that sort of, hey, I slip, whatever. And he's making light of this in addition to the victim blaming and especially naming individual victims. That was just entirely inappropriate in his Tuesday statement. And I think that lost him a lot of points in the court of public opinion, especially among women.
Yeah, I think so. Well, Jenna Ellis and George Papadopoulos, thank you both for joining us.
Thanks so much, Jen.
Hi, Emma Reckenberg here. If you like this video, there's a whole lot more to see on Newsmax TV. You can watch for free right here on our YouTube live stream and be the first one here each time our experts break down real news. Just hit that subscribe button, ring the bell icon, and stay with us on America's fastest growing cable news channel, Newsmax TV.